Okay, so last time we saw a small lemma at the end of the class to the proof of the division algorithm in fx. Okay, the idea was we are attempting at proving division algorithm in fx. Okay, and as I said, there will be nice consequences to proving the division algorithm, exactly how we have seen that there are nice consequences to the division algorithm in z. Okay, like there are some nice consequences to division algorithm in z, there are going to be some nice consequences to the division algorithm in fx. Okay, so hence we want to prove something like division algorithm in fx, and what we essentially proved is this, that is, just to recollect, we proved that if you have two polynomials in fx, say f and g, fx equals summation and going from 0 to infinity. No. Fx equals summation a n x raised to n, and g of x equals summation n going from 0 to infinity. Actually, I go with a n and b n, right? b n x raised to n. Okay. If we know that the degrees of the degree of a of x is t, okay, which is strictly greater than the than s, which is the degree of b of x, then we proved that this particular polynomial, that is, as we can try to imagine, what we have to do is we take a of x and we want to knock off the highest degree coefficient, so subtract from it. The highest degree coefficient over here is at x raised to t. Okay, so I want to subtract at x raised to t, so that would be at. Okay, remove out the highest degree coefficient from there, that will be bs inverse by multiplying bs inverse to this, right? So bs inverse, and then the highest degree over here is s, so I want to make the highest degree t, so that would be multiplied by x raised to t minus s b of x. If you do this, then this polynomial becomes a polynomial of degree t, this one here, with highest degree coefficient at. Okay, so when you subtract from it, the highest degree coefficient is going to go. So what happens to the degree of this? So either this will become the zero polynomial, okay, it's possible that this might become the zero polynomial, or the degree of this will be strictly less than the degree of a, which is t. This is what we have proved in the last session. Okay, so I'm going to use this to prove the division algorithm. So okay, so this is your division algorithm in fx. So suppose it is a subscript. That's a mistake. Okay, that's a subscript, it's not a raised to t. There is no a raised to t. Okay, so suppose you have two polynomials in fx. Okay, f is a field. Let us use that notation. I'm not going to keep specifying that f is a field. So a of x is some summation a n x raised to n, and you have some let us say some b of x. I'm interested in dividing a of x by b of x. Okay, these are polynomials in fx. Okay, f is a field. Okay, then there exist unique polynomials. This is what we are going to prove. Unique polynomials q of x and rx in fx, okay, such that you can write this a of x as b of x times q of x. This is this is in fact exactly the same as what you see in Z, but in Z also there is a restriction on R, right? It's not just anything like this. There's a restriction on R. R over there should lie between 0 and modulus of B, or in that case it depends on how you write it. Here what would be the restriction? Okay, so here where we don't want, we either want Rx to be the 0 polynomial, okay, or sometimes I write this as 0 of x also, so that's this thing. So either R of x is 0, because I need to specify this separately because 0 has no degree, okay, by our definition the 0 polynomial has no degree, or the degree of R of x is strictly less than the degree of b of x. Okay, so this is what we want to prove. So let's see how to go about with it. So just like in Z, okay, we want to search for the remainder. Okay, we want to search for the smallest remainder. That's what we do in Z also. We look at a minus bq, the set of all the a minus bq's as I have explained last time, and then we take the least element in that set, least positive element in that set. Here let's see what we do. So the search is the same way. We are going to look at a similar set. So we will take S to be the set A of x, right, minus, so these will give you all the remainders. In a way this is going to give you all the remainders when you divide by q. So keep taking off q from it, sorry, taking off b from it. But here you are not multiplying by numbers, you are multiplying by polynomials. So that's the difference. So a minus b of x times, let's say, q prime of x, such that q prime of x is in fx. Okay, now there is nothing here like in Z. We needed to prove that this was non-empty. This is obviously non-empty. Okay, can you tell me some this is obviously going to be non-empty. This set is definitely non-empty. Can you give me some examples of some polynomials which are in this? A of x is in this set, right? You take q prime to be the 0 polynomial. Okay, you want one more, you can take q prime to be 1, you will get a of x minus b of x, and you can come out with many of them. So this is obviously non-empty, there is no problem in that. Okay, so there are some few cases which arise here. So let's see. I think I need to take care of certain cases separately. Yeah, so there are some trivial cases which I need to possibly take care of first. Let me have a look at that. So there are some trivial cases to get the quotient and the remainder. One is if the degree of A is less than the degree of B, okay, then what happens? So case 1. So the technique which I am going to follow is like this. First I am going to prove existence and then prove uniqueness. So all we are doing now is we are only going to prove existence. Later on we will prove uniqueness. Okay, so we will only try to catch hold of this Q and R satisfying this property. Later on we will show that you cannot have it with two different, there is only one choice for this. Okay, so the case 1 is there is I don't want my b of x to be 0. Yeah, so one obvious this thing is b of x cannot be 0. I don't want to divide by 0, that's general this thing. So case 1 is, what happens if A of x is 0? Okay, is there an obvious choice for Q and R when A is 0? And it has to satisfy this property. So is there an obvious choice for Q and R if A is 0? Yeah? What do you can take Q of x as? 0. And what will R of x be? 0. Okay, so that's the natural choice. Taking Q of x to be 0 and R of x to be 0, we get, these are the 0 polynomials, okay, we get, so this is, so hence we can now keep this case away, right? You can see that both sides of the equality are satisfied, are equal, yeah, both sides of the equality are the same, that is A of x is 0, Q of x and R of x is 0, so this is 0. And note that we are writing it in this form because R of x is 0. That's something which you need to see. The second case is, what happens if the degree of, is there an obvious choice when the degree of A, okay, even in natural numbers also this is an obvious choice. When the number that you are dividing by is bigger than the, so if you have A and B, you want to divide by B. If you know that A is smaller than B, what would be the remainder? Yeah, the number itself, that's right. So if you know that A is less than B, if you want to write, or I think here is, yeah, A is less than B, I want to write A as Bm plus R, where M is, yeah, where R is less than B, then the natural choice is take R to be A itself and M to be 0. That's the natural choice over here. So this is the same thing which happens in this case. If the degree of A is less than the degree of B, then we can take Q of x. What is the choice? R of x to be, yeah, so we can take Q of x to be 0 and R of x to be A of x itself, okay, and then we have, so these are the trivial cases. Okay, so therefore we can assume that these two things don't take place. Okay, for the third case we assume that these two things don't take place. So case 3 is, this is the actual work. So case 3 is that A of x is non-zero and the degree of A of x is greater than or equal to the degree of B of x. Now let's start subtracting the multiples of B of x from A of x. We can take S to be the set A of x minus B of x times Q prime of x, where Q prime is a polynomial in fx. Okay, and this is, as we have discussed earlier, this is obviously non-empty because A of x lies in this set. Okay, yeah. So what is the natural choice for the remainder? Can anyone? So I expect that the remainder is going to fall over here because I want the remainder in such a way that A of x is equal to B of x times Q of x plus R of x, right? What would be the natural choice for the remainder? Is there a natural choice for the remainder? Okay, so the natural choice for the remainder, so we can't take smallest remainder, it doesn't make any sense, right? But we can talk about the polynomial of least degree or a polynomial of least degree, right? By the well ordering principle, we can look at the degrees of each of these polynomials, look at that set of the degrees of each of these polynomials. By well ordering principle, we know that that set will be non-empty. Why that set will be non-empty? In fact, there is another case actually that comes up here. Can I take that together with this? Yeah, there is another case actually which comes up here, that is if 0 appears in this, that would be a problem. Yeah, okay, fine. We can take that here itself. Okay, so the natural choice of the remainder if 0 appears here is the remainder you take as 0, because in that case B divides A, right? If 0 appears here, what does it mean? It means that there is some q of x such that A of x minus B of x times q of x is equal to 0. That means A of x is equal to B of x times q of x. So B of x divides A of x. So the natural choice in that case is for the remainder would be 0. Okay. If 0 doesn't appear here, okay, then we know that the set of all, if you look at the set of all remainders, okay, it is a non-empty set because this has a positive remainder, A of x has a positive, so not remainders, set of all degrees, okay, set of all degrees of these polynomials if you look at, we know that that set is non-empty, okay, it's a non-empty subset of natural numbers because 0 does not appear here, okay. So it's going to be a non-empty subset of natural numbers, hence by the well ordering principle it will have a least element, okay. And take a polynomial with that least degree, okay, that is the natural choice for the remainder. Let's have a look at it. So we need to see why that is the natural choice. So if the 0 polynomial appears here, if 0 is in S, then taking q of x to be equal to, okay, if then 1 second, then there exists some q of x in f(x) such that, right, 0 is here, that means you can write 0 in this manner. So there is some q of x such that 0 is equal to A of x minus B of x times q of x. Hence what happens? Hence you have A of x would be equal to B of x times q of x plus R of x, where your R of x is the 0 polynomial, okay. So this is what, hence we will assume that, hence therefore assume that 0 does not appear in the set, okay, because if 0 appears in the set we know how to write it, so assume that 0 does not appear in the set. So if 0 doesn't appear in the set, we let R of x be a polynomial. You see here I am putting a polynomial, we don't know that there is just one till now, okay. Eventually we will know that there is only one polynomial of that degree, but of the least degree there is actually just one polynomial, but we don't know that yet, so we will see that, okay. So let R of x be a polynomial of least degree in S. Okay. So this is a polynomial of least degree in S. We can do this by, how do we know we can do this? By the well ordering principle. Okay. Look at the set of all the degrees. Okay, that's going to be a subset of natural numbers. Okay, it's a non-empty subset of natural numbers because a of x is a positive degree, right? A of x has positive degree since it, or I can't say positive. It's not a subset of natural numbers necessarily. It is a subset of whole numbers. Okay, natural numbers union. That also has, every subset of whole numbers also has a least element. Okay, a non-empty subset of whole numbers, n union 0. Okay, of least degree in S. So R of x be a polynomial of least degree in S. Okay, so this means that you can find some q of x in R of x, sorry, in fx, such that you can write your R of x, because this is a polynomial over here, right? So therefore you can write it in that form. That is, you can write this as a of x minus b of x times q prime of x times q of x. Are we done with the existence? Are we done with the existence? In all cases, have we shown that we can find a Q and R which satisfy the required properties? Yes? Even in this case? We have not shown something very critical, right? What is it? We need to show that the degree of R of x is less than the degree of b of x, right? We know that R of x is non-zero, but we need to show that the degree of R of x is strictly less than the degree of, in all other cases it is done. Either the R of x, in fact in all other cases R of x was 0, right? No, in this case R of x was a of x, but in either case, in all other cases, either R of x was 0 or less than the degree of b of x. So that is fine. In this case we still need to show that R of x, okay, the degree of R of x is less than the degree of b of x. So what happens if it's not? Okay, what happens if it is not is exactly like what we do in, again, number theory. This is exactly the technique which we utilize. Okay, that is, we will push in another element in this set and show that it has smaller degree. Okay, we are going to push in another element in this set and show that it has smaller degree. So let's try. So, so suppose the degree of R of x was strictly greater than the degree of b of x. We should get a contradiction, in fact greater than or equal to. So if we get a contradiction, then it will tell us that the degree of R of x is strictly less than the degree of b of x. So we are going to utilize the same, we are going to now utilize the previous exercise. Okay, let us say that the degree of R of x is, just a second, let me just, I think we go with u and v. Yeah, so let us say that the degree of R of x is u and the degree of b of x is v. Okay, so we will take this as u and take this as v. Okay, and let us express this as summation. Just we'll use the similar notation that we have been using. By capital R we will use small rn. Okay, so we are going to write R as summation Rn x raised to n. In that case, so you consider this polynomial, consider R prime of x to be this polynomial. That is, I want a polynomial smaller than, with degree less than r of x. So that's going to be r of x minus, okay, the degree of this is u. So I need to do ru, okay. I'm using the previous exercise, okay, times bv inverse, right, x raised to, I think it is u minus v b of x, okay. So if I show, we know from the previous theorem that the degree, that either this is going to be 0, okay, or its degree is going to be strictly less than the degree of r. So if I manage to show that this is in S, then I have got a contradiction. If I manage to show that this is strictly less than S, then I have got a contradiction. And it's quite easy to see that this is in S. To see that this is in S, you should be able to write this in this form, that is a minus b of x times some q prime. Is that easy? What is r of x? It is nothing but a of x minus b of x times q of x, right? And now you can just combine your q of x with this portion, that gives you some q prime of x. So it is quite obvious that this is in S. Okay, so let's see. So notice that either, this is from the previous exercise, either your r prime of x is 0 or the degree of r prime of x is strictly less than the degree of r of x. Why it's not okay for an element of this set to have degree less than r of x? Yeah, because of the choice of r of x, right? We have taken r of x to be a polynomial of least degree. So in no way can any element from this have degree lesser than it, right? Is that okay? So we have taken r of x to be a polynomial of least degree. There is nothing which can have lesser degree than that, okay? So yeah, so let's see. So since r prime of x is what? This is nothing but a of x minus b of x times q of x minus ru bv inverse x raised to u minus v b of x. This is equal to a of x minus, this is b of x, b of x times q of x plus ru bv inverse x raised to u minus v. Okay, this is some q prime, right? This is a minus b times something, so therefore this belongs to S. Okay, this will belong to S, right? Because this is a minus b times something, some polynomial. So therefore r prime of x will belong to S, which is a contradiction. So since this is a contradiction, what does it mean? We have assumed that this happens and got a contradiction, so it means that this does not take place, right? So therefore the negation of this is true. So therefore what is the negation of that statement? What's the negation of this statement? The degree of r of x is strictly less than the degree of b of x. So therefore the degree of r of x is strictly less than the degree of b of x. So this proves a existence part of the theorem. Okay. The next thing is we need to prove uniqueness of this theorem. Okay. So uniqueness. So we'll assume that we can write a of x You can see now I'm not making any restrictions on the degrees of A's and B and whatever. So suppose for I equals 1 comma 2, okay, that's just writing in shortcut, there exists some Qi and Ri in Fx such that you can write A of x equals B of x times Qi of x. I am writing two equations in one shot. Okay, this is A of x equals B of x times Q1 of x plus R1 of x. Okay, is this okay? Okay, I'll write here R1 of x, and you can also write your A of x as some B of x times Q2 of x plus R2 of x, where suppose you can do this, where either R1 of x is 0 or the degree of R1 of x is strictly less than the degree of B of x, and similarly either R2 of x is 0 or the degree of R2. That means I have two different ways to express this in this form. Okay, I have two different ways. What do I need to show? Q1 equals Q2 and R1 is equal to R2. Okay, now it is quite obvious that if I prove that Q1 equals Q2, then R1 will directly be equal to R2, because they are both equal to A of x. So if Q1 is equal to Q2, you just cancel out on both sides, because addition, with respect to addition, we know that this is a group. So that will tell you that R1 is equal to R2. So our intent will be that. Okay, and that is also not very difficult, because you just have to notice that, okay, we can equate these two, right? If we equate these two, we will get B of x times Q1 of x plus R1 of x equals B of x times Q2 of x plus R2 of x, right? And we can take this to the side, take this to the side to give us B of x times Q1 of x minus Q2 of x equals R2 of x minus R1 of x. And let's ask ourselves a small question: what happens if Q1 is not equal to Q2? Okay, what is the degree of R2 minus R1? At most, the maximum of the degrees of R2 and R1, right? The degree of A plus B, A of x plus B of x will always be, at most, it can be the maximum of the 2 degrees. It can be less than that, because you can have cancellations of the highest degree terms, but at most it's going to be the maximum of the 2 degrees. Okay, but both their degrees, okay, if they are non-zero, okay, if they are non-zero, both their degrees are anyway less than B of x. So the degree on the right hand side will be less than B of x. Is that clear? Okay, so the degree of this is less than B of x, the degree of this is less than B of x, hence the degree of this minus this will be less than this, or it is 0. If this is 0 also, you can make your argument quite easily. If it's 0, that means R1 is equal to R2, then you would have to make an argument that Q1 equals Q2. I don't know whether that needs to be taken separately. No, you don't. I'll tell you why. We know that B is non-zero, right? So that's sufficient. Okay. So suppose Q1 is not equal to Q2, Okay, what is going to be the degree of this? If Q1, we know that in Fx, what is the degree of A into B? The degree of A plus the degree of B, right? This is a non-zero polynomial. We are given in the hypothesis this is non-zero. Also we know that this is not equal to this, so therefore this is a non-zero polynomial. Hence the degree of this is going to be the degree of this plus the degree of this, which is going to be at least the degree of B of x. That's the contradiction. Because the right hand side, if we assume that Q1 is not equal to Q2, the degree on the left hand side will be at least the degree of B of x, and the degree on the right hand side is going to be not at most, it's going to be in fact at most the degree of B of x minus 1, right? Because both these degrees are strictly less than the degree of B of x. Okay, so let's try to, that's the contradiction, which means that Q of x has to be, Q1 of x should be equal to Q2 of x, and the moment you put Q1 of x equals Q2 of x, you will get R1 of x equals R2 of x. Okay. So simple proof, just imitating the division algorithm in Z. So suppose Q of x, Q1 of x is not equal to Q2 of x. What does it mean? It means the degree of B of x times Q1 of x minus Q2 of x, because this is a non-zero polynomial, right? This is a non-zero polynomial, this is a non-zero polynomial. Okay, so therefore this is going to be the degree of this plus the degree of this. So this will be greater than or equal to the degree of B of x. Not writing everything, I expect that. This could be 0 also, okay? The degree of this could be 0 also. There is no, the degree could be 0. Degree 0 means the polynomial is constant. So that's, we are not ruling that out. So therefore the degree is going to be greater than or equal to, that's why equal to, okay? But what happens to the degree of R1 of x is strictly less than the degree of B of x, and also the degree of R2 of x is strictly less than the degree of B of x, okay, which implies that this would imply that the degree of R2 of x minus R1 of x is going to be strictly less than, because when we sum, it's going to be the, at most it's going to be the degree of the maximum degrees, okay, that's the most it can go, the degree of B of x. This is a contradiction, right? Because these two are equal, but this one has degree greater than or equal to B of x, this one has degree less than or equal to B of x, okay. So this is a contradiction. If you want, since R2 minus R1 is this, we'll have degree of B of x times Q1 of x minus Q2 of x is strictly less than the degree of B of x. So from 1 and 2, we have a contradiction. Since we have a contradiction, it means that Q1 of x is equal to Q2 of x, because that's how we got the contradiction, by making this false assumption. And therefore, substituting this back in star, okay, substituting this back in star, we will get R1 of x equals R2 of x. Okay, this proves our existence and uniqueness. So therefore, we have proved the division algorithm. Okay, so we have shown that when f is a field, fx has one nice property, okay, something which we are familiar with. This division algorithm is a property which we are familiar with in Z. So in a way, there is something from Z, it behaves somewhat like Z in some ways, which we will see. Okay, so see, we have always worked with up to now polynomials. It's a very like a sequence, in fact. There is one interesting homomorphism from the ring Rx to the ring R, okay, which is called as the evaluation homomorphism, which is as natural as what you do when you substitute in place of x. Okay, that's it. But the question is this a homomorphism? So it does become useful, it does become important for us to ask the question whether it's a homomorphism, because when you look at the product of two polynomials, okay, generally this is the place where you fall in trouble. So if you look at the product of two polynomials, f of x into g of x, okay, if you look at the product of two polynomials, you want to actually know that when I substitute alpha, first substitute alpha in f, then substitute alpha in g, is that, and then take the product. Okay, so that would be something like f of alpha into g of alpha, right? Substitute it in place of x. I can do that. This is kind of a finite sum, right? Because it's a polynomial. So in place of x, you just go up to the degree and put alpha in the place of x. Now you have everything from rings. You're multiplying in a ring, adding in a ring, all fine. Okay, so you can talk about this product in the ring. The question is this the same as looking at the product of the two polynomials and then substituting it back, substituting x? That's a problem. Okay, what do you think? Is it always true? Is there something required? Okay, so there is something required. It is not much, but there is definitely something that is required, and we require that R is a commutative ring. Okay, we will see why when we are proving the statement. So let's define what we mean first by E of alpha. Okay, so I'm going to give this definition in general. I could have given it only in fx, but then it's a waste of time. So let's give it in general. So let D be an integral domain. And A comma B belong to D with B non-zero, B not equal to 0. Okay, so we will say that A divides B. You can see that very often now we are going to use a lot of the terminology which we use in Z. Okay, like when we talk about division, it's the same kind of notion which we get from Z, and this is done on purpose. Okay, so we say that B divides A, B A. Okay, we also write this as B divides A, just the normal notation which you use in this thing. If there exists some C in D such that whatever you expect. Okay, and mostly we are going to do these things only in integral domains. So we have commutativity and all the nice properties. We also say that, in this case, we also say that B is a factor of A. Okay, that's just the other way of saying it. Okay, either we say B is a factor of A or B divides A. Okay, so in fx, what will this mean? We all know that fx is an integral domain, right? If f is a field, we know that fx is an integral domain. In fact, we have proved something more than that. We have proved that if D is an integral domain, then dx is an integral domain. Okay, we have proved that if D is an integral domain, then dx is an integral domain. Okay, this is what we have proved. Now f is a field, hence an integral domain, therefore fx is going to be an integral domain. If we don't expect that fx is a field, okay, we generally, you are not going to expect that fx is a field. In fact, I have already given you examples of elements in fx which are not going to have inverses. Particularly, if you look at x itself, there is no way that x has an inverse. Why x does not have an inverse? Because if it has an inverse, say some g of x, then x times g of x should be 1. But the degree of x times g of x is the degree of x, which is 1, plus the degree of g of x. That gives you a counter. That gives you a contradiction. Okay, because the degree of x plus the degree of g of x is going to be strictly greater than 1, but 1, the degree of 1 is 0. Okay, so that tells you that there's always going to be one element at least in fx that does not have an inverse, x. Okay, any in fact, what are the a nice question is to ask yourself, what are the units in fx? I will leave that up to you. Let's see who gives me an answer. What are the units in fx? Which elements have multiplicative inverses in fx? Okay, let's see who gives me this answer. Okay, anyway, so we will come back to that later. So we will here another, if R is a commutative ring, and say alpha is some element in R, and A of x is a polynomial in fx of degree, polynomial in fx, then we will define this element, this, to be some element in R in this manner. That is, if A is the 0 polynomial, I am going to define this to be 0 itself. Okay, A of alpha I am going to define to be 0 if A of x is 0. Okay, see, we know that by definition these are formal series. Okay, that's my problem with this definition. Okay, that's what we need to sort out. By definition these are formal series, right? These are formal series such that after some stage everything is 0, right? So what will I define this here? I will define this as summation n going from 0 to t an alpha raised to n. That's the natural thing. If the degree of alpha, so if this is, if A of x is non-zero and the degree of A of x is t, then this is the natural choice, right? Because the rest are all 0, right? Even if I go something like t plus 5, in any case a t plus 1, a t plus 2 up to a t plus 5 are all 0. So it won't make a difference. The degree of A of x is t. So I only need to go up to t. I hope this is okay. This is the natural choice. This is what you do when you talk about polynomials, right? Evaluating a polynomial at alpha, this is exactly what you do. Okay. So this is the, my question is whether when I do this, I get a homomorphism. So let R be a commutative ring. Alpha belong to R. Okay. Then we can talk about this function phi alpha, which we call as this is called as the evaluation homomorphism. Not the theorem, but this homomorphism is called as the evaluation homomorphism. Okay. Then we look at phi alpha of, so this is now a function, phi alpha is a function from fx to f, fx to, not fx, rx to r, and we define it in this manner, or at any we are going to define this to be A of alpha. Okay, if A of x is in Rx, then A of alpha is going to be in R. That's what we do here, right? These are all elements of the ring. An is an element of the ring, alpha is an element of the ring. So alpha raised to n is going to be in R, an times alpha raised to n is going to be in R, and these, you just multiplying things in the ring and you add them among themselves, you get an element of the ring. That's what we have. So this is what we want to show is a homomorphism. So how do I prove that this is a homomorphism? I need to prove that it satisfies two properties. One of them is quite obvious. So we take some A of x and B of x in Rx. Okay, let me give this similar notation which I have been using earlier, that is summation an x raised to n, and we have B of x. We are going to write this as summation let us fix notations for this. See, one thing is quite clear, that if one of them is 0, okay, let's make those arguments first. If either A of x or B of x is equal to 0, okay, let us just do it with A of x. The other one works similarly. So if A of x is 0, okay, if A of x is 0, then what happens to A of x plus B of x? It is nothing but B of x. And also what happens to A of x into B of x? It will be 0, right? This will be 0. So therefore, what happens to phi alpha of A of x plus B of x? This is nothing but phi alpha of B of x, right? Okay, but what is phi alpha of A of x? It is going to be 0, right? So this is also going to be phi alpha of A of x, right? Because phi alpha of A of x is A of alpha, which is 0, right? Plus phi alpha of B of x. So there is nothing to prove when one of them is 0. this will automatically hold. Okay. Similarly, here what happens? You have phi alpha of a of x times b of x. This is the zero polynomial, so this is going to be 0. This is some polynomial, right? A of x times b of x is some polynomial. Is the zero polynomial. So phi alpha of a of x, and it's what you get when you substitute. That's here. If a of alpha is if a of x is 0, then this is r. Then we get 0 here. That's the definition. And this is also going to be phi alpha of a of x. Why? Can anyone tell me? Why does this hold? Because phi alpha of a of x is 0. Because a of alpha is 0. Okay, by definition. So this holds when either a of x or b of x is 0. What happens in the other case? Of course, I am not going to take the case when b of x is 0. It's exactly the same. So I am going to allow both of them to be non-zero. A of x is non-zero and b of x is also non-zero. Once they are non-zero, I know that they have some degrees, right? So let us say that the degree of a of x is t and the degree of b of x is s. Okay, so we'll say let t be the degree of a of x, because we can talk about degrees only of non-zero polynomials. Okay, that's the problem. Okay, we will let we know that the degree of a of x plus b of x, right, is again if a of x plus b of x is 0, then that would mean that a of x, that's a small consideration which we have to take, that is if a of x plus b of x is 0, that is b of x is minus of a of x. So then we still need to know what happens. So okay, that's not a problem. I think we can do with that. So we'll take u to be the maximum of t plus t and s, and we'll take v to be t plus s. Okay, that's going to be the degree of a of x into b of x. Okay, so let's see what happens to phi alpha of a of x plus b of x. This is actually quite easy. There is something I am actually leaving out here, but we will complete it here. Okay, so this is phi alpha of, how is this defined? This is summation n going from 0 to infinity, right, n going from 0 to infinity, a n plus b n x raised to n. That's how it's defined. Now what is phi alpha of this? If we need to make an argument that it is always going to be okay, this is what it's always going to be. Why? See, by definition, if this is 0, okay, that means all these ANs and BNs are 0. By definition, if this is 0, that means it maps to 0, right? But that means that all the an plus bn's are 0, right? All the an plus bn's are 0. But that will mean that this is also 0. All an plus bn's are what does it mean to say that the polynomial is 0? All these coefficients are 0, right? That will mean that this is also 0. This is an element of the ring, right? All these an and bn's, if all an plus bn's are 0, then this will also be 0, right? So this will work when this is a 0 polynomial. If it is not the 0 polynomial, then this will be, by definition, this will be n going from 0 to its degree, right? N plus bn alpha raised to n. But this is anyway going to be greater than its degree, because this is the maximum of t and s. So I'm just adding some zeros at the end. Okay, so this is valid. I hope everyone is with me. See, if this is the 0 polynomial, what does it mean? That means these coefficients are always 0, which means that these are always 0, so therefore this sum is 0. Okay, not this, yeah. So this is valid. This, if these are 0, then by definition this goes to 0. This is anyway 0, so this is valid when this expression is valid, when this equality is valid, when this is a 0 polynomial. Okay, if it is not a 0 polynomial, by definition this is going to be n going from 0 to its degree, this expression. Okay, but the degree is anyway going to be less than u. That means what I am adding here after the degree is just going to be zeros. That's fine. Adding zeros later gives me the same thing. Okay, so this is always going to be a valid expression, which I can split as n going from 0 to u, an alpha raised to n plus summation. Now this is nothing but n going from 0 to t, an alpha raised to n. Can anyone tell me why? Why is this n going from 0 to t? Because t is the degree of a of x. So after t I will just be, u is maximum of these, right? So t is less than it. After t all these coefficients will be 0. After t all the coefficients will be 0. So therefore this is going to be exactly this, because all coefficients after t are going to be 0. Similarly all coefficients after s are going to be 0 here. Okay, so this will work here. So this will be phi alpha of, this is by definition phi alpha of a of x plus phi alpha of b of x. Now we need to look at what happens in the product. So the product, there is no problem, in fact. I mean no problem of the 0, because that degree is not difficult to see. Okay. So what is phi alpha of a of x times b of x? To know this, I should know what is a of x times b of x. Okay. So this is phi of x, phi alpha of summation n going from 0 to infinity, summation k going from 0 to n, right, ak b n minus k, that's the nth term. This is the nth term. We have discussed this last time, x raised to n. Okay, and what is the degree of this polynomial? It is going to be t plus s, right? This, the degree of this is going to be v. Okay, so by definition this has to be summation n going from 0 to v summation ak bn minus k alpha raised to n. This is by definition of the evaluation homomorphism. Okay. Now, for me to prove this, I should be able to say these are now all finite sums. We are in the ring now. This is in the ring R. Okay, I need to say that this is summation n going from 0 to v. This is sufficient. Once I say this, I am done. I need to say this. How do I know that this is true? So it is asking what is the coefficient of alpha raised to n, right? It's asking what is the coefficient of alpha raised to n here. See, you have this bracket. This bracket has a0 plus a1 alpha plus a2 alpha square and so on up to av alpha raised to v. Okay. Similarly, this has b0, b1 alpha up to bv alpha raised to v. Okay. When you take this product, what is going to be the coefficient of alpha raised to n? That's the question. How will you get alpha raised to n? Am I missing something? No, it's fine. Yeah. So how will I get this coefficient of alpha raised to n? Yeah. So can anyone tell me? This is what I am looking at, right? Okay. So let's see. If we try to break this open, we have a0 b0 plus. Okay. Look at alpha terms. What do they look like? It's going to be one is going to be a0 b1 alpha, a0 b1 alpha plus. Don't commute for now. Okay. You're going to get a1 alpha b0. Can you see that? I'm just using distributivity. Okay. How do you get this? I'm looking at the alpha terms, the terms which have just a single alpha appearing in it. Okay. So what will that be? Here you can see a0 b1 alpha, that's the only one, and a1 alpha b0. Okay. What about alpha square terms? You will get a0 b2 alpha square, correct, plus a1 alpha b1 alpha, right, plus a2 alpha square b2. Can you now see why we require R to be commutative? Yeah, thank you. Can you now see why we require alpha to be commutative? Okay, so this is the reason why we require to see that alpha is commutative, so that we can now push all the alphas to one side, take all the ans and bns to the other side and get this kind of a thing. Okay, you can also see what would be the nth term over here. It would be a0, right, a0 bn alpha raised to n plus a1 alpha bn minus 1 alpha raised to n minus 1, right, plus a2 alpha square bn minus 2 alpha raised to n minus 2, something like this. Okay, can you, I hope everyone can see this. So this will then end with I think an alpha raised to n b0, that's this will be your nth term. This is going to be the nth, the terms which have n alphas in them. Okay, this is going to be the term which has n alphas in them. So to push your alphas all to the right hand side, you are going to need the fact that R is commutative. Okay, so this will give us exactly this. This is what I have been trying to say here, that this will be exactly this, because R is commutative. So if R is not commutative, we cannot push that alpha around. Okay, but since V is nothing but T plus S, okay, since V is nothing but T plus S, and we know that T plus S is bigger than T and bigger than S also, okay, greater than or equal to, what will happen is, after the Tth stage, everything is going to be 0. Over here, after the Tth stage, everything is going to be 0, right? Because everything after T, the ANs after T are going to be all 0. So here you will get summation n going from 0 to T, an alpha raised to n into summation, which is nothing but phi alpha of A of x into phi alpha of. So this proves that this is a homomorphism. Okay, it's very important to note that alpha is commutative, that R is commutative, otherwise it need not be. Okay, so this tells us something important, that to evaluate in the product, to say that evaluating in the product is the same as first evaluating in A, then evaluating in B, and then taking the product, okay, is the same only if we can say it's the same only when R is a commutative ring. Okay, that's what it tells us. So we do use the evaluation map very often in the preceding part. Okay, so we are going to define a root of a polynomial. Can anyone tell me what you expect the root of a polynomial to be? So if f is a field, in fact I don't even need to say a field, this is okay to define even in a integral domain, but I think, don't know whether we use it anyway outside. Anyway, if f is a field, I think let's just go with, yeah, that's fine. If f is a field and alpha belongs to f and some f of x, yeah, there's going to be a switch in notation now, because I will barely use the coefficients of the polynomials. So I'm going to start using small letters. I was purposely using capital letters because I was using a lot of coefficients of the polynomials earlier. So it was convenient there, but it's not anymore. So I will start using small letters for polynomials. Okay, so f, q, r in small generally. So this is in fx. I hope this is okay. Then we say that alpha is a root. Can anyone tell me of f of x? Root, there's another term used, or a 0. If what happens? F of alpha is 0. Okay. So that's what we mean by saying that it's a 0. And another more equally important definition is Okay, so we will define what you mean by root of multiplicity, but later on only we'll realize why this is important. So let F be a field alpha belong to F and see K be a n, K be an n, then we say that alpha is a root of f of x of multiplicity k if, okay, we'll say it's a root of multiplicity k if this polynomial, that is x minus alpha raised to k, if this divides f of x. What is the meaning of this divides f of x? It means that there is a polynomial g of x such that f of x can be written as x minus alpha raised to k times g of x. This is an integral domain, right? So that I have spoken about division in an integral domain earlier. So this means that you can write f of x as some x minus alpha raised to k times g of x, okay? And if this divides it, and because I want to talk about multiplicity k, this is the natural definition, okay, and this does not divide it, okay, the kth power divides but the k plus 1th power does not divide. So it is the largest power of x minus alpha that divides f of x, right? It's the largest power of x minus alpha that divides f of x. Now we'll answer some simple questions, or look simple, but these are things which we know from the polynomials which we work in R and C. So we expect them to work here also, and they do. One corollary is called as the remainder theorem. So the question is basically, what is the remainder of f of x when divided by x minus a? Yes. What is the remainder of f of x when divided by x minus a? Yes, anyone, any ideas? What is the remainder? See, yeah. What is the remainder of f of x? F of x is some polynomial in the field over the field f. Okay. Let's say alpha is some element of f. Okay. The question is, what is the remainder? In division algorithm, there can be a unique remainder. Okay. So what is that remainder? What is the remainder of f of x when divided by x minus alpha? That's the question. What are the possibilities for the remainder? What are the possibilities of the degree of the remainder? What am I dividing by? X minus alpha. What is the degree of x minus alpha? 1. So what are the possibilities of the what are the possibilities for the remainder? 0 or a polynomial of degree 0, 0 or a polynomial of degree 0. That means either it is going to be 0 or a constant polynomial, the remainder. Yeah, that's what it is. That's exactly what it is. It's going to be f of a. Okay, that's the natural this thing. And f of x is in fx. Okay, the remainder of f of x when divided by okay, so the remainder of f of x when divided by x minus alpha is okay. Now see, the remainder is a polynomial. Okay, from now on I am going to mix these two notations up. Okay, because it is convenient. Okay, so which two notations I am going to mix up is the constant polynomial. See, for us by definition the constant polynomial is a formal series where the constant term is that number and everything else is 0. But I am not going to distinguish between the constant polynomial and the constant of the ring. I am not going to distinguish between the constant polynomial and the same element of the ring. Okay, I am not going to distinguish between them. I am going to write them alike. Okay. It is from context, you have to understand what it is, because if I am multiplying it to a polynomial, it's a polynomial. If I am multiplying it to a ring element, it's a ring element. Okay, that's the from context you can understand what it is. So the remainder of r of a of f of x when divided by is, so this will be, I'm going to not to be vague here, but otherwise I am going to be vague. Okay, the remainder of f of x when divided by r of x is 0 if f of alpha is 0, meaning it is going to be the 0 polynomial if f of alpha is 0. That means alpha is a root of f. Okay, and the constant polynomial and the remainder of f of x when divided by x minus alpha is 0 if this, and the constant polynomial f of alpha if, what do I mean by constant polynomial f of alpha? Means the constant term is going to be f of alpha and everything else will be 0. Okay, so for us 0 is not a constant polynomial. Okay, we distinguish between these two things because of the degree. Okay, if you like to, you could also say that 0 is a constant polynomial. Okay, the constant polynomial f of alpha if f of alpha is not equal to 0. The proof is quite obvious, but there are some slight intricate details which you need to be careful. So by the division algorithm, we know we can write f of x. There exist some unique polynomials q of x and r of x, which is the remainder. This is the remainder, right, in fx, such that these are unique, such that my fx is, what is it? Yeah, x minus alpha times q of x plus r of x, where this will not always be unique. It is only when I restrict r, that is where r of x is either the 0 polynomial or the degree of r of x is less than the degree of x minus 1, x minus alpha, which means that the degree of R of x is 0, right. So therefore R of x can either be 0 or a constant polynomial. This is 1, right, a polynomial of degree 1. This needs to be less than this, so it can only be 0. Okay, that's what division algorithm tells us. Okay, now how do we prove this? It's a very simple proof, since we have proved the evaluation homomorphism. Using the evaluation homomorphism, I'm going to use the evaluation homomorphism at alpha on both sides. Since it is a homomorphism, I can go across the plus and the product. It's a homomorphism, right? We proved that phi alpha is a homomorphism. Hence, I can go across the plus and the product. Okay, so this is generally how we'll write evaluating one on LHS and RHS with respect to alpha. Okay, here when I take phi alpha, I will get f of alpha, right, and here when I take phi alpha, I will get, right, first we can, because it's a homomorphism, so I can go across this, so phi alpha of this will be phi alpha of this plus phi alpha of this, but phi alpha of this is R of alpha, phi alpha of this is alpha minus alpha times q of alpha. Okay, so this will give me alpha minus alpha times q of alpha. You can see how important it is to know that this is a homomorphism. What does this give me? R of alpha, right? This gives me R of alpha. Now notice here that if what happens to the remainder, my question is what is R of x, right? I need to know what is R of x. R of alpha is f of alpha. I need to know what is R of x. Okay, but we will get it from here itself, because we know that R can either be just the 0 polynomial or a constant polynomial. Okay, what happens when you evaluate the constant polynomial? What do you get back? If you evaluate a constant polynomial, so you take a constant polynomial a, okay, if you have a constant polynomial and you give you an example, say f of x is the constant polynomial will be n going from 0 to infinity a n x raised to n, okay, where a n's will be, say this is alpha when n is equal to 0 and it is 0 when n is greater than 0. That's the constant polynomial, right? Only the constant term is 0, everything else is, sorry, only the constant term is alpha. This is the constant polynomial alpha. I am referring to this as the constant polynomial alpha. What happens when I evaluate this? In fact, I will put here a b or something. What happens when I evaluate this at alpha? What is f of alpha? What does f of alpha give me? Summation n going from 0 to 0, right? That's the degree. What's the degree of a constant polynomial? 0. So summation n going from 0 to 0, that's just the first term, a0. So it just gives us a0, which is b. That's what happens when you evaluate the constant polynomial. You get back the same constant. Irrespective of where you evaluate it, you are always going to get back the same constant. That's natural, right? The constant function is also that. That's what we expect to happen. Okay, so yes. Yeah. So suppose f of alpha is 0. Suppose f of alpha is 0, what does it mean? What will happen? R of alpha will also be 0. Okay, if f of alpha is 0, R of alpha will also be 0. But we know that R of x is either the 0 polynomial or a constant polynomial, right? What would happen if R of x was the constant polynomial? What would happen to R of alpha? It would give us the 0th coefficient. The evaluate R at alpha, it gives us the constant coefficient. So it cannot be 0 if it is the constant polynomial. Is that clear? Since I know that R of x can either only be the 0 polynomial or a constant polynomial, there are only two possibilities here. See, if f of alpha is 0, then we know that R of alpha is 0. When can we have R of alpha 0? If R of x is 0, we know that R of alpha is 0. That is not a problem. What happens if R of x is a constant polynomial? What will happen to R of alpha? Can it be 0? No, because when we evaluate a constant polynomial at any point, it will give us back that 0th term, which is a non-zero number. So this can only happen if R of x is 0. Okay, then this is, which implies that R of x is 0. Okay, and what happens if f of alpha is non-zero? Then my R of alpha is going to be equal to f of alpha. So when I evaluate R of alpha, I get back f of alpha. But this is non-zero, so obviously, because if I started with the 0 polynomial and evaluated it, at any point where I evaluate a 0, I will get back 0, right? So it cannot be this. So it has to be a constant polynomial, right? R of x has to be a constant polynomial. Question is, which constant polynomial is it? What is its 0th term? Right? 0th term has to be f of alpha. Why? Because when I evaluate it at the point alpha, I should get back the 0th term, right? Therefore, this is the 0th term of the polynomial. Why? Because this is a constant polynomial. If I evaluate a constant polynomial, I will get back the constant term. There is no other option. Okay. What is the constant polynomial? 0th term is non-zero, everything else is 0. If you evaluate that at any point, you will always get back the constant term. Okay. So therefore, then this is equal to this, which implies that R of x is the constant polynomial with constant term for 0th term f of alpha. That's exactly what you get. So that's the remainder. That is the remainder theorem, and from this you can show that okay, so from this we can show that there is some relation between the 0 of a polynomial and the factor x minus alpha. Okay, what is the relation? Okay, I'll say let Okay, so alpha is a root of f of x if and only if, okay, I want to relate the root to the factor. So if and only if x minus alpha is a factor, or x minus alpha divides f of x. And this follows from the remainder theorem. Okay, so let us see. One way is obvious, the other way is what you need to prove. One way is obvious. What do you mean by saying that x minus alpha divides f of x? What do you mean by saying that x minus alpha divides f of x? It means that there is a polynomial in fx such that you can write f of x as x minus alpha times that polynomial. Okay, so this will mean that there exists some q of x in fx such that you can write f of x as x minus alpha times q of x. Now it is quite obvious that alpha is a root of f of x, right? Why? You just have to use the evaluation homomorphism on both sides. Okay, again you can see that we are using the fact that that evaluation map is a homomorphism because of the product. Okay, so this will mean that evaluating on both sides, we are using the evaluation map on both sides. Okay, we will get f of alpha, but phi alpha of the product is phi alpha of this into phi alpha of that. So that is going to be alpha minus alpha times q of alpha. Alpha minus alpha is 0, so this is going to be 0. Okay, so therefore this tells me that alpha is a root of f of x. What about the other side? What if alpha is a root of f of x? Conversely, suppose alpha is a root of f of x means that f of alpha is 0. Okay. Now by the remainder theorem, what do we know? What should be the remainder? What should be the remainder of f of x when divided by x minus alpha? 0. Okay. So by the remainder theorem, you will have some q of x in fx such that f of x can be written as q of x times x minus alpha times q of x plus the remainder is 0. So plus 0, which is nothing but x minus alpha times q of x. And what does this mean? That x minus alpha divides f of x. Okay. So there is a relation between the root and this is a root if and only if x minus alpha is a factor. Okay, you will have proved this, I suppose, in R and C. These kind of things were proved in R and C. You need division algorithm to prove such things. So there is another equivalent way of talking about, you will remember what's the definition of multiplicity of the root? Yeah, we said that alpha is a root of multiplicity m if x minus alpha divides f of x, x minus alpha raised to m divides f of x, but x minus alpha raised to m plus 1 does not divide it. Okay, that means that it is a root of multiplicity m. Okay, so there is a relation between that. There is another equivalent statement for that. That is, I will put as a corollary. I'm using this for something later. In fact, a nice, interesting result, which again you'll have done in real and complex number. You'll are familiar with this, but yeah, I should actually tell you what I am trying to prove. So what I am attempting at proving is that if you have a polynomial of degree n, okay, if you have a polynomial of degree n, up to multiplicity, it can have at most n roots. Okay, if you have a polynomial of, you all are familiar with this in RNC. Okay, so if you have a polynomial of degree n, up to multiplicity, it can have at most n roots. Okay, that's what we are trying to prove. So that's why this work. So let F be a field. Alpha be an element in F. And f of x be some polynomial in fx. Okay, then so alpha is a root of f of x of multiplicity m if and only if. Okay, so there is another equivalent statement. You all must be familiar with this statement also. I am not sure. So this is a root of multiplicity m if and only if there exists some q of x in fx such that we can write f of x as x minus alpha raised to m times q of x. Now this means, by till here it just means that x minus alpha raised to m divides f of x, right? But I also want to say that x minus alpha raised to m plus 1 does not divide it. Okay, how do I say that? By saying that q of alpha is non-zero. Okay, q of alpha is non-zero. The proof of this is again not very difficult. So first we can assume that alpha is a root of f of x of multiplicity m. Okay, so what does that mean? Alpha is a root of so suppose alpha is a root of f of x of multiplicity m. Okay, I want to prove this. Very easy to get this q of x because we know that x minus alpha raised to m divides this, right? So since that's the natural way of pulling out what q of x is. Okay, since x minus alpha raised to m divides f of x, there exists some q of x in fx such that we can write f of x as x minus alpha raised to m times q of x. So we have this. Now I need to say that this q of alpha is non-zero. Okay, what happens if q of alpha is 0? By the previous corollary, it will mean that x minus alpha divides this, right? By the previous corollary, it will mean that x minus alpha divides this. But if x minus alpha divides this, that means I can write q of x by the previous theorem. I can write q of x as x minus alpha times g of x. That's the definition of divides, right? So now this is x minus alpha times g of x. Combine that with this, you will get x minus alpha raised to m plus 1 g of x. That will mean that x minus alpha raised to m plus 1 divides this. That is a contradiction to the fact that this is a root of multiplicity m, because x minus alpha raised to m plus 1 will divide it. Okay, so that's the way we can approach this. So suppose q of alpha is 0. What will happen if q of alpha is 0? There exists, suppose q of alpha is 0, x minus alpha will divide q of x, okay, which implies that this divides this means there is some g of x in fx such that you can write q of x as x minus alpha times g of x. So therefore, what will happen to f of x? F of x is x minus alpha raised to m into that. So you have x minus alpha raised to m times, in place of q of x we have x minus alpha into g of x, which is nothing but x minus alpha raised to m plus 1 times g of x. And therefore, what we have, x minus alpha raised to m plus 1 divides f of x. This is obviously a contradiction. What does it contradict? The fact that m is the multiplicity of f of x, right? Because m is the multiplicity of f of x, we know that x raised to m x minus alpha raised to m plus 1 does not divide f of x. So therefore, since this is a contradiction, it means that this is false. So therefore, q of alpha should be non-zero. So we have proved that this implies this. If this is a root of multiplicity m, then this happens. Now we have to prove that this implies this. Okay. So conversely, suppose f of x is equal to x minus alpha raised to m times q of x, and q of alpha is non-zero. Okay, this obviously tells us that x minus alpha raised to m divides f of x. Okay, we want to prove that alpha is a root of multiplicity m, right? So what do we need to prove? That x minus alpha raised to m divides this, but x minus alpha raised to m plus 1 does not divide it. Okay, that's what we need to prove. Definition, just go by definition. So this will mean that x minus alpha raised to m divides f of x. We want to show that x minus alpha raised to m plus 1 does not divide it. Again, go by contradiction. So we assume that it divides and get a contradiction. Suppose x minus alpha raised to m plus 1 divides f of x. What will happen here? It will mean that you can find some q of x such that I can't write q, right? I need to write g of x, such that we can write f of x as x minus alpha raised to m plus 1 times g of x. Okay. Now we can equate these two, right? F of x is equal to both of them. So we have, q, this we can equate with that. We will get x minus alpha raised to m q of x equals x minus alpha raised to m plus 1 g of x. Okay. Now I am going to cancel this x minus alpha with x minus alpha raised to m with this minus x minus alpha raised to m. Can you tell me why I can do that? Why can I cancel x minus alpha raised to m with this x minus alpha raised to m? Okay, so let me cancel and then we'll come back to it later. If I cancel that out, I will get q of x equals x minus alpha times g of x. Okay, now applying the evaluation homomorphism on both sides, you can see how many times you have applied the evaluation homomorphism. Applying the evaluation homomorphism on both sides, what we will get? Q of alpha is alpha minus alpha, which is 0, right, times g of alpha, which is 0. So this is going to give us 0. right? But that's a contradiction to the fact that q of alpha is non-zero, right? So this is a contradiction, and what have we contradicted? This statement. So therefore, x minus alpha raised to m plus 1 does not divide f of x. Now can you tell me why we can cancel this out? How do I know I can cancel this out? So essentially you have to tell me, if I have f of x times g of x equals some f of x times q of x, why can I cancel this out and get g of x is equal to q of x? Yeah? Why can I cancel? Yes, yes, correct. Why can I cancel? What are we working in? fx. What is fx? fx is an integral domain, right? In integral domains we can cancel elements like this. Okay, the cancellation law of integral domains tells us that we can cancel like this. There are no inverses, but there are no necessity of inverses, but in fact a question for you is to tell me what are all the elements that have multiplicative inverses, but we can still cancel because we are working in an integral domain. Okay, so because we are in an integral domain we can cancel this out and get q of x equals whatever. So that proves our theorem.